Have you ever wondered whether the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment, and acted from that place?
Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your hosts Brian Berneman and Kayla Greenville, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world.
We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers.
From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host, and for this episode I have the pleasure to be joined all the way from Upper New York or Upstate New York in the USA by Corbie Mitleid. Thank you, Corbie, so much for taking the time to be here. For all of our listeners that are going to listen to this episode, can you share with them who is Corbie?
You think I know yet? And I'm 66. I'm still figuring that out. I think what you're looking for actually is what I laughingly call the 30-second elevator speech, because everybody wants to know, how did you start doing all this stuff? Okay. When I was 9, I read a children's book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes. And I thought, ooh, there's magic in the world. I want to go find it. Fast forward to 1973, when I was a senior in high school here, working part-time at a store every American will know called Spencer Gifts. And they had the James Bond 007 tarot deck, and I bought it because we were all hippies then. We had our elephant leg bell bottoms and our fringe jackets and our tarot decks. 5 years later, everybody else had moved on to roller skates and disco balls, but I was still reading the cards because I found them fascinating. So for 20 years, I read for friends, making sure that I would be a clear channel for the information coming through. And I kept my ego on a shelf, very important. All of a sudden in 1994, I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people with no training. That's when the universe handed me my draft notice and said, hello, you're working for us. So I hung out my shingle, professional part-time. Meanwhile, lots of different careers: actress, author, inspirational speaker, video producer, legal assistant, executive recruiter, writer for a graphic novel series. But the psychic work was always on the side. The day of 9/11, as we watched the towers burn, I turned to my husband and I said, I have to do the psychic work full time. People need to know there are other answers out there. He said, I believe in you, go do it. So for a year, I still worked 70 hours a week for the executive recruiting people. And I worked evenings and weekends to make sure I could make a living doing psychic work full time. Found out I could, closed the door on corporate in 2002, and I have never looked back. Now it's 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. I read about 1,000 people a year, and I get to get up every morning. I don't have to get up every morning. This work is my bliss.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And thank you for sharing a little bit of that, timeline, because I think that a lot of times it's really important for us to be able to share and to understand that we all go through journeys and we all have our own path, and how we get to where we are right now, regardless of our age, it's a journey.
Nobody in my family does anything like what I do. To this day, my brother doesn't tell anyone I'm a psychic. He says, oh, she's a motivational speaker, because he believes that all psychics are charlatans and fakes. I'm never going to change his mind, and I love him anyway. It's not going to keep me from doing the work I need to do. So if people are just starting out on this road, please do not think it's a 6-week or a 6-month course and boom, you are enlightened. Trust me, you think that, you are at the bottom of the road. People who are truly enlightened know they're never done. They're never finished. There's always more. But oh, they enjoy the ride. They enjoy the path.
That's so beautiful said. And since you brought up that about your brother, what for the people listening that perhaps don't know much what's a psychic and how, how one operates like you, because I believe that everyone operates differently,
Okay.
at least the ones that I had experiences with.
No, you're absolutely right.
What's a psychic?
If you're listening to this, my darlings, you're psychic. Trust me. We're all wired like the same house plan. The way I like to explain it is we all have 10 fingers. All of us, if you sit us down in front of a piano, can play chopsticks. Some people really want to learn how to play well, so they study music and they practice their scales and they put time into it and they get good. 1 in 10 million is Elton John, okay? Do not assume that you're going to be the Elton John of WikiWoo, as I cheerfully call psychic work, but you can absolutely get good. I always tell people, you can do what I do. So what does psychic mean? Psychic is anything that you get other than with your 5 senses. There is the expression, a 6th sense. That is what our psychic intuitive parts are, and we all have them. I highly encourage people to see us as tools. We're not the repairman. We're not in there to solve your life. And the more you can learn, the better we like it. If I can be facetious, there are 7 billion people in the world and I'm 66. I will not be able to read them all. If you want to learn to be a professional psychic, oh, please, you are so welcome. There is no competition like that. There isn't. Every single person is needed. And as you said, Brian, every one of us operates differently. There is no right or wrong, except in how you treat your clients. That's the right or wrong.
Yes, and that's so beautiful said, because for me, and this is my belief and my experience in the spaces that I work in, I don't see anybody else as competition as well. I see them as, people that are elevating consciousness or doing their own work, showing up as they should show up, or who they are, not the should. I don't like the word should so much, but
I understand.
At the same time, what I understand is people will resonate either with me or with them or with someone else. People resonate with whatever they resonate, and that is the correct thing. So if people go to you, it's because they are resonating with you. And if they don't resonate with you, then they can go to someone else.
That is so correct. People often ask me, I'm going into a big psychic exposition. How do I choose anybody? And I tell them that they have to be good puppies. The first thing they need to do is they need to do their walkies, and they go walking around in the expo hall and they see everybody, and there'll be some that they get drawn to. And then they need to get paper trained, meaning they have to collect from whatever table. There are flyers, there are rack cards that will tell you a little bit about the person you're looking at. Then you'll probably decide on 3 or 4. You go back and you talk to them directly if they're not busy, or you talk to their front people, but you also look at their testimonial book on the table. All of us that are professional have them. You'll find out, are we kind? Are we funny? Do we have specialties? Children, dogs, dead people? Would they come back? But the last thing is always check in here. Check in at the heart. You are putting your hard-earned money on the table. If the psychic doesn't feel like they have a brain in their head, they really care about what they're doing, or they're going to give you good information. Don't go there, no matter how fascinating their table set up, no matter what good things you've heard. They're not your psychic. There are some people who really like what I call glurpy purple with angels. Really, really sweet. Hi, let's see what your angels are going to tell you today. Honey, I'm from New York. We don't do that. I am in your face. I am funny. I am fast, and I am practical. So 2 very different energies. I will take some people, and the angel lady will have others, and that's okay. Neither of us is wrong. It's like, what do you choose? Do you want to wear jeans today, or you want to wear a dress? Neither is wrong. It's just who your style is.
Yes.
The other thing that I'll remind people is We don't all do the same thing. It's like a doctor will go to medical school and learn lots of things there. But if he's been a pulmonologist, that's your lungs, for 40 years, and you say, I have this rash on my foot, he probably won't remember what he learned. So you go to a podiatrist who's a foot specialist. With me, I am a past life specialist. Now, why did the universe decide to let me play in that sandbox? Number one, I was a theater major at one of our top universities, so I know how to put together characters. I am a writer. I've published books, so I know how to tell stories. And I absolutely love history. I have all my life. I married a museum director. My husband directed an 8-building 18th century museum here in New York for 23 years. So let's say you have two of us that can do past lives. This person doesn't have my background mix, and I do. This person could be correct, but would say, I see that you were a woman. I see it's a long skirt and a big hat. It's in front of something, some very fancy hallway or something. So I know it's old fashioned. I would be able to see the exact same scene and go, okay, that's a hobble skirt, picture hat, that kind of ostrich feather, and you're standing in front of the Brandenburg Gate. I think it's Berlin in 1911. You know, which one's going to give you more information? So if you really want to know about past lives, you find someone who can do past lives. If you really want to know exactly what your spirit guide looks like, I can't draw a stick figure with a sharp pencil and a lot of prayer. Don't come to me for spirit art. There are other people that do glorious paintings. Go find them. See, so that's why when you know what your gifts are, there isn't competition, especially when you know, I'm not the right person for you. If you're a true professional, you might say, you might want to go to Judy Abbott across the way. I think that she's the one that you might want to see.
Yes.
It's the client comes first. And if you know you can help the client do something better, that's what you do.
Yes, definitely. I love that. And that's, as I was saying, like I do that a lot of times. I tell people, and I have actually have been told, why are you telling people to go to that other person, like, instead of working with you? And I'm like, well, they are not, like, this is not supposed to happen. There's no resonance. They are resonating with that, even if the client sometimes doesn't know it. I can tell. So it's like, okay, let's go and do that. And Corbie, I'm interested to explore something that you touched on, and I'm going to go first to what we're talking about, this resonating. You said like that, listening to your heart. A lot of times I find with many of my clients or many people that I know, we have been disconnected from our body, from our feelings, from our hearts, and from what I would call either our inner voice, inner knowing, or our intuition. Can you share a little bit on how someone can actually touch that if they haven't been used to doing something else than using their heads?
The most important thing that you can do if you want to walk these paths is put your ego on the shelf. The ego is a construct. When you are born, you don't have an ego. You are absolutely in pure soul, okay? Ego is how we protect ourselves in the world based on what we understand. If, for instance, your mother was an alcoholic, you're not, but so you decide that you have a judgment on anybody that drinks. Oh, he had a beer, I wouldn't date him. That's ego. He may be the perfect person for you, and you may have seen him drink the one beer he drinks a year, but your judgment and your ego, in order to protect you, said no. Realize that when you ask the universe for a clear answer and you shut up in your own head, you zip it, then you begin to hear. Will it be right all the time? Of course not. You are human and we are fallible. But listening to your heart is also when you look at that person, do you relax a little bit? Do you feel drawn to them? Do you feel like you could get the right information from them? I advise not to go to people that lean across the table and say, oh, you have a family curse. How many in your family? 4? You have dog? $50 every family member, 25 per dog. We'll fix that. And they drag you into the booth. I've seen that happen. These are the fake gypsies. There are real gypsies in Roma, not these guys. So when someone says that there's something wrong with you that they can fix, or they're the only people in a room that you should talk to, or they don't answer your questions, but they just kind of give you slick talk, could you trust them? Would you trust them in your house? Probably not. The thing that I know my clients love about me is I am absolutely honest, and I am funny. And when people laugh, they lower their shields, even if they don't know they have them, the shields, and the information gets in. For instance, a lot of women are told, you need to be better with your boundaries because women are taught not to have them. We don't have a right to have them, kind of thing. And so all the time they're told, yes, you need to have boundaries. You need to learn that you can say no, and on and on and on. I'm looking to see where my paperwork is. And, there's only so many times you can say that. I'm talking, but I'm off the camera for a second. There are only so many times that you can say that, and people will not hear it. Instead, what I did is I made up postcards and I said, I am going to give you a fabulous 5-word mantra. And I give them this postcard. And they laugh. And on the back, I had written the tale of Sid, which is Moses' second cousin, which explains why they should say no. And it sounds like, a Borscht Belt joke. But they take it home and it's on the refrigerator and they see it and they laugh and they remember. That's my style. So if that's the kind of thing you'd want, yes, you'd probably like me better than the ones who would scare you or be so sweet that your teeth would ache. But they will each have their own fan club audience. So that's why you really need to trust your heart level. The three of us could tell you the same thing, but you'd only believe it from me, not because I'm good, but because I'm the one that you felt you resonated with. Hear that difference, okay? If any psychic ever tells you that they're the only one that you should see, run. Because even the best of us are only 85% accurate. The only one 100% accurate is God, and he's not doing psychic pairs or phone calls these days. So there you are.
I think that Corbie, like something that I think that it's interesting in terms of this is, and I know this from myself, and I know this from a lot of my clients, is we want messages, right? And we want these messages, and when we listen to something and it's like, yes.
Right.
How do you see the space of messages in terms of seeking it outside of ourselves? Because I think that a lot of times we have the answers as well, but sometimes we need that outside support.
That's right. I would tell you to talk to your psychics the same way that I tell you how to tell the difference between hearing your spirit guides and hearing your ego, okay? And this is in my book, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road. It's very, very important because this is what people tend to get messed up with. And that is, no spirit guide would ever chastise you or put you down. They would never pump up your ego at the expense of someone else. They would never try to guilt you into doing something. And they would never encourage you to do something that you know is illegal, immoral, harmful, or against your higher good. That, if you hear that, that's your ego. That's not a spirit guide. And if you hear that from an intuitive, a psychic, a medium, get up, walk away. Because that's toxic. And you deserve better.
Definitely. That's so good. And Corbie, you mentioned before, and I didn't want to let this go. I think that this is a fascinating thing. past lives.
Mhm.
You mentioned this
Yes.
before, and this is
Mhm.
something that you do. Um, what a how did you get connected? You mentioned a little bit, but how did you get connected, especially to past lives? And what do people need to know about past lives?
That could be 5 hours right there, Brian, but I'll see what I could do. I was trying to figure out who I was. I picked up two specific past lives. And the first one, quick story. Back in the 1980s, when I was in my 30s, there was a wonderful rock and roll group in Philadelphia. I will not name which one, but I was not a rock and roll groupie. I never have been. But the lead singer was like, that guy's mine. Of course he wasn't. And I knew that for me to feel that way out of the blue, there had to be something I needed to explore. So I had done rebirthing, which is a way of going inside. And when I did, I saw myself, 18th century Scotland, about 1783 or 4, with a taller gentleman. And I knew that was me and that was him. And what we understood was I was the local tavern girl, and a light skirt is the polite way of putting it. And this person was the local lord. We'd had a couple of flings. I got pregnant, tried to blackmail him about it, and he had one of his retainers drown me. Okay, that's just a life. But I couldn't get his name. And I was at a restaurant outside of Philadelphia, and all of a sudden in my mind, I heard Marcus Baron Gordon Huntley. Now, I was a history major, but my stuff was Wars of the Roses, Henry VIII, Elizabeth. I didn't know what this was. What's the two titles? Well, what do you do when you're trying to figure out titles from England? You go to a book called Debrett's Peerage. And I saw that in 1752 was born Alexander 12th Marquis of Huntley. And in 1784, he was named Baron Gordon of Huntley, Marcus Baron Gordon Huntley. Out of the blue, I knew from nothing, but I looked up his history and it paralleled very much with what I had remembered.
Mm.
And the best thing was, once I saw that, realized that I didn't want to repeat past history, the obsession disappeared immediately. Once I said, nope, he's not mine this time and I'm not his, and that's fine. Now, fine, pass him on the street, it's another guy. Perfect. So that is what fascinated me the whole way. How detailed I could get, I did not know until Robert Schwartz asked me to be part of his book series, Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift, Your Soul's Love, which looks at pre-birth planning, life between lives. That's when I found out I really did have a talent for bringing things down with great detail. So what do I do now? Now, if someone comes to me, I can do a quick past life thing. All right. A woman came to me at a psychic fair and she said, look, my son's in his late 20s. He still won't live more than a mile from me. He asked me about everything. I'm really concerned. What is the thing we've got that he won't just live his own life? And I said, all right, I'm going back to 1944, Utah Beach, which was D-Day. He's on the beach. He's taken a pretty bad leg wound. You're his commanding officer. You've taken some shrapnel yourself, but you're dragging him over a dune or something, and you both live. And she looks at me and she says very quietly, can you see my rank? I said, yes, you were a sergeant. And she sits back in her chair and goes, he's nicknamed me Sarge since he was 3 years old, and we never knew where that came from. What was I to know? So the way I get this is I get out of the way. I literally tell my ego, you go read a magazine on a shelf somewhere. And I just let it roll in my head like a movie. Again, I have this talent because I know history. If she asked me to draw a picture of who she was back then, stick figure. But she asked the right questions. So when people come to me with an obsession, a phobia, a place they either love or hate and they don't know why. I mean, I'm Scots Irish. Why do I have this thing about Peru? A person. why did I date this guy for 6 months in high school and I've never forgotten him? Then I can go into the Akashic and pull that down. Now, there's a very, very big difference between past life regression, which is what everyone's heard of, and past life retrieval, which is what I do. I cannot stress strongly enough, do not do past life regression, which is where you get hypnotized, unless you're working with a certified past life specialist or a certified hypnotherapist. Because if you relive a horrible death or a traumatic experience, they have the technique to pull you out, to allow you to see it, but not relive it. I don't. I'm the one, if you don't want to have to do that work, but you need to know, I'm the one who goes up into the Akasha, pulls down the book and says, read chapter 2.
Yes.
But past lives are very important. The next question is usually, so why don't I remember all my past lives? Because if you're a janitor in San Francisco for 30 years, and all of a sudden you find out that you were George Washington, you don't want to think about, I'm a janitor in San Francisco, I was the father of America. And you spend time wanting to relive the life that is no longer yours. So we only get hits on past lives when they are something that can help us move forward in our lives.
Yes.
So
there is something that you said that I think that it's important to explain for a lot of people that perhaps have never heard of it, and it's the Akashic records. I remember when I was a teenager and I got introduced to the Akashic records through one of my energy healing teachers, and it was for me such an incredible experience at that time to go into this space that had all of these records. It's like I like to call it a lot of times, like that is the library, like that's the book of life, depending on how people can relate to it. It's like where all of the records are. And when I got into starting to experience this, what I noticed was that similarly as what you were saying, I get a feeling. I don't see. Therefore, my teacher at that time, he told me, do not work with clients with reading the Akashic records, because they would want something that you cannot give them. He said, use it as you're doing something else, but don't go and be like, I can read your Akashic records, because that is not my gift. There's other people, like what you're saying, you can access it and you can see that. And I think that it's really, really important. For me, it was a really interesting thing, because at that time I was able to get a little bit of that, yet I realized that's not my path, even though for quite a while I was trying to see. I was trying to see until I softened and I was like, well, that's not my gift.
And it doesn't mean you're wrong for not being able to do it.
No.
That's what people need to understand. Well, Madame Hoo-Ha was able to do this for me. Why can't you? Darling, because I'm not Madame Hoo-Ha. That's why.
Yes.
You know, and it's one of the problems. The book I wrote, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road, is basically how to find a good intuitive if you need them, and how to stay away from the bad ones. And I was delighted to find that a lot of psychics bought the book and said, oh, I wish I'd had this when I was starting out. It would have been so much simpler. Because one of the chapters in there that's funny is when getting a reading won't help. And everybody recognized this. You know, 95% of the readings that we do, simply, it's, does Bruce love me? You know, it's always the romance. And there are some people that will go from psychic to psychic to psychic to psychic to psychic until someone says yes. Or they have a way of wording it, kind of beating up on the psychic they're with. Does Bruce love me? No. Well, is he gonna love me? No, he's not. Well, if I do such and such, will he love me? No. Well, how bad is he gonna call? No. Boom, boom, boom. Because she's hoping we'll go, yes, yes, he loves you and he wants 7 babies with you. He just doesn't know it yet. Oh, good. I thought so. Please don't do this to us. You think a psychic's life is easy? I have done stand-up comedy on being a psychic because of things like that. If you're looking on your own path, then realize sometimes you're gonna get information that you don't like. Guess what? You're human. That's life. If you get a past life where you were not such a good person, it's a role we play. The example that I use, which most, at least Americans, Europeans, etc., would know, is the television show Doctor Who. There was Matt Smith, was a fine actor. He played the 11th Doctor, who was kind of goofy and all kinds of crazy, the crazy best friend. But when he was done playing in Doctor Who, he was, for 2 seasons, Prince Philip in The Crown. Now, Prince Philip was completely different from the 11th Doctor, but both were brought to life by Matt Smith. The analogy, the Doctor and Prince Philip are incarnations. Matt's the soul that made them both happen. Okay? Prince Philip, in some ways, was a not so great guy. That doesn't mean that Matt Smith was not a great guy. That's simply the role that he was playing. So we've all been saints, we've all been sinners, we've all been murdered, we've all been the murderer. It is simply how we learn down here in the Earth School. Yes. So as you're looking at these things, please do not judge yourself if you found out that you robbed banks for a living in the 1920s. Better to see, what did I need to learn? Where was my fear? Why did the soul believe that this was an important thing? And that brings us to karma. Karma is not carrot and stick, bad and good. It's not. Working with Robert Schwartz, we learned that karma is 5 things. Healing, service, contrast. If you want to learn about abundance, do a rich life, then a poor life. Unbalanced energy, which is neutral, and healing of beliefs. So you can see, you can learn all of those things with what we would consider a good life or a bad life. I'm going to use the example. Many people would think, oh, if you got a terrible disease and died, you must have been bad. That's bad karma. What if it's service? And I go back and I use the example of Ryan White. Ryan White was a teenager in the 1980s who contracted HIV from a blood transfusion. And in those days, they had no idea really what HIV and AIDS was. It made him a pariah. People were so cruel to him and his family. But back to my good example guy, he became friends with Elton John. And Elton became so attached to the family that he played at Ryan's funeral. And at that point, Elton John was doing drugs, booze, sex, overshot, everything, all the addictions. But he was so moved by Ryan that he got clean and sober and has been ever since, and started the Elton John AIDS Foundation, which has raised $500 million for AIDS help and research worldwide. So Ryan White is what I call a courageous soul. His soul said, all right, short life, kind of painful, but look what I can create in the world if we go this route. So Ryan had service karma. See how that totally changes how you view things in the world? It gives you a much more compassionate viewpoint.
Definitely. This is something that I see, especially a lot of times when I got asked, even though this is not really what I do for work or anything, but I got asked by certain people, why, how do I work with my son that, he has this kind of like disability or different ability or whatever. Why did he come to live in this way? Or why did this person die so young? And because I have this open view of something similar to what you said, that I don't understand as me as Brian, I don't understand the impact or the influence or the learning that person living in that way or dying in that way has for themselves and for others. So how can I judge it? And that doesn't mean disregarding the person that is left with the child that died. Like, that's a different thing. But
Yes.
the fact that for me, I believe in past lives, I believe in reincarnation, I believe in the learning and experiencing life from different perspectives, from different points of views, then that enables me as well to have a little bit of more malleable perspective.
Exactly. But there is only so much that we can entertain in these little pea brains of ours, and we have to accept that. On the other hand, cats think we're gods and we know where all the treats are, don't they, Manfred? What did I tell you? Uh-oh. So anyway,
yes, and Corbie, I wanted to know
think. Yes.
from the people that perhaps don't believe in past lives or haven't been introduced to past life as a thing, what would you say to them to be able to perhaps expand to the idea that that is a thing?
I get real New York on them. What makes you think you're bright enough to get it all done in one life? Are you crazy? It takes dozens. You can't have an entire college degree in one semester. You take different courses, you have different professors. It's like that. For one thing, with past lives, we have to live both male and female lives. Because what we do in a male life may inform how we live in a female life, depending on how we treated females as males. So are they going to hurt my feelings if they don't believe in past lives? No. It's like I told you before we even started this. We are not going to know until we're dead what the truth is. We may get up there and find out that it isn't Buddha, it isn't Muhammad, it isn't Jesus, it's Ralph the Wonder Dog. And we're just so many puppy toys. We don't know. So don't get hung up on what's after. What are you doing now? How can you live now? How can you make the world a better place? I'm in the middle of writing a book with a student that is my apprentice, and we're calling it Elder and Apprentice, because what millennials and Gen Zs are going to have to go through, we boomers and Gen X, we had no idea. When I was growing up, we never thought that the world would not be around. We had never been attacked on our own soil. In America, we never worried that our next door neighbor would come after us with a gun because we believed in getting vaccinations or we voted Democratic and they feel that's, a sin. So millennials and Gen Zs have to think differently than we do. They absolutely do. And the difference between a boomer and an elder, a boomer is just your age and it was so good when we were kids, we were so much better than you, why can't you make it happen? Take a look around. An elder knows that it's our time to get off the stage and let them shine, that they will be doing the hard work. We will offer them what information we have that is useful and timeless. But if you're a true elder, you'll find those one or two incandescent people that you know that you can give your information to, and they will make a big difference to the next generations. That is who my student Ula is. And so the elder and apprentice that we are is lifelong. She will be my apprentice until I die. Now, that doesn't mean that she won't get better than I am. She might. But it is the alchemical relationship that I'm talking about. So one of the questions I know you usually ask is, what's the best resource? Besides your own knowing, find someone, if you are millennial or Gen Z, find an elder, someone who has information, but understands that they're not perfect and that you have a right to take that information, and use it how you see fit as you move forward in your life.
Mm.
If you are a boomer or a Gen X, get your head out of the closet, distill down what you know, and be willing to offer it when you're not on stage. Because we'll be gone 10, 20, 30 years. Kids will be here. We owe them every tool we can give them before we leave.
Mm.
That too is part of spiritual awakening.
Mm. And that is so important for me in terms of intergenerational wisdom and connection, something that as society we have disconnected from the importance of understanding the cycle and giving from us as the young generation as well, and younger than me, of course, giving also the opportunity for our elders to impart their wisdom and their life experience. Because, and I had this actually in one of the podcast episodes, one of our guests, he said there's a difference between an elder and an older person. One is not doing anything more for society, and that might be because society is not allowing them. So we need this to be two-sided. The person needs to impart the wisdom and needs to be open to that, and then we as young generations, we need to be open to listening and to taking whatever resonates and not, and leave the rest behind.
They're saying the same thing. I use boomer versus elder because here in America, a very disparaging statement is for younger guys. Okay, boomer. And it's a real insult. And people my age are terribly incensed that I take the side of the millennials and the Gen Zs. But you have to look beyond where you are. You really do. The good old days will never come back. I compare 2019 to 1913, that year before World War I, which changed the world. 2020, which I facetiously called the year of murder hornet bingo and hold my beer, totally changed the world. And we're never going to go back to the freewheeling, nothing, just blind consumerism, we could do whatever we wanted of 2019. That world is gone. So if you object to mask and vaccine mandates, that's like people that want to go back and live like it was 1890. It's not happening. Spiritual awakening is realizing when you are here at a certain time, it means that this is when your soul felt you could do the most good for yourself and your fellow humans. Do it. Don't be one of those who says, and again, it's my humor, my aura don't stink. I'm so perfect. Oh yeah? Try it again. We all need to pitch in, every single one of us. Don't just leave it up to Greta Thunberg and go, yeah, she's really smart, while you're throwing out 14 pieces of plastic.
Yes, that's so wonderful. And that, like what you just said, was going to be one of my questions, which, I think it's really important to get those messages across. And lastly, Corbie, how can people find you and work with you if they resonate with you?
Oh, they can't avoid me. They really can't. I'm all over the internet. My website is CorbieMitleid.com. You can find me on Facebook, Fire Through Spirit. You can find me on Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, Corbie Mitleid. And if you really want to work with me, that's not just have a reading, but work with me, then you go to my Patreon page. And that's where, if people don't know what Patreon is, it is a way of, whether it's $1 a month, $100 a month, there are tiers, and you support my work. You tell me you believe in me. And in return, I do what I can to give special things to you, an hour with me a month, what I call, tribal talk, where people who are at a certain tier, we just get on Zoom You have a question, I may do a reading for you, but if there's somebody else in there that does readings, you may get 2 or 3 or 4. We may try guided meditations. We may discuss matters of the world, but it is guaranteed time with me. And as I said, I read 1,000 people a year. I'm really busy, but you want to make sure you have time with me. That's a way to do it. And I will teach you every single thing I know so that you can start moving forward in the world too.
Beautiful. Thank you, Corbie. Thank you so much for taking the time for a wonderful conversation. Thank you for your humor as well. That's always important for me in anything that is quote unquote spiritual. That sometimes for a lot of people can seem really strict and a little bit, like boring, or perhaps boring is not, or, like it doesn't have that humor. I always like to bring a little bit of humor into my work as well, because that's what we are here to do as well, to live life.
Yes.
So thank you, Corbie, for taking the time, and thank you for sharing, and for all of our listeners. Thank you for listening to this. As always, if anybody resonated with anything or you learned anything, please leave a comment, let us know about it, and we always welcome that. Thank you, Corbie.
My pleasure.
Until the next time, everyone. Bye.
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.